Hi everyone, Trina Phoenix here, and I wanted to get back into these stanzas from the book of Secret Wisdom, and it's so amazing because literally we've been talking about this. Brian and I came into it, agape love, and it's so funny because this is the name of the beginning of this book. It's called Agapegenesis. So basically, it's saying that we're in a process of creation of love. And when we talk about creation itself, it's done through the act typically of love and a sexual union. Oh, you agree, Cody? You agree with me? So through these magical gifts of love, it seems that we were created without permission somehow. Somehow the gods created us, and when they did, I don't think it was allowed. So through this process of reconnecting to love, we're connecting back to that which we truly are. And this is, I believe, when it says the angels will walk again among the earth, and I believe that that is because the immortals and the mortals will be walking on the same planes for the first time in a very, very long time. But Agapegenesis, the 12 stanzas from the book of Dazan. So we were going into the third stanza, which was the Sowing of Love. And I'm not going to read all of this. I'm going to read just parts of it, chunks of it, so we get the gist of it. Because I literally do see that there is such a profound resonance of truth for me in this information of my personal soul's journey and the evolution and creation of the soul, and how this process appears. It just, to me, this feels, there's so much resonance in this. And when you guys hear this, I think it's going to blow your mind too about the wars and the battles, and it seems like this could be pretty darn accurate. So in stanza 3, we were learning about sowing of love. And it says, the light was triumphing. The light knew how strongly people felt the need for him. Oh, you two, settle down. The human heart was in need of the fires of love. They were already established as the undeniable truth for everyone. The gods knew their work, and above all, they knew the periods being beyond time and space. They were fully aware of the great significance and the designated periods by which the world was ruled. The bright light had broken through. He had pierced the layers of darkness piled up by human ignorance, penetrating the dense evil matter. He glistened in the gloom. The light was given birth in the soul. He was palatably felt by man. Wonderful changes then started to happen in the world. Once they realized the whole life-giving might of the flame, people began serving the fire. They were burning in their hearts, but their tongues of fire were still erratic and did not reach very high. Man had given life to the fiery seed, and now he began to glimpse at a faint and still immature shoot, not knowing how to make it grow. With his still limited knowledge, he reached out and touched the flame of knowing. Even though the flame was now practically being devoid, because in gathering the darkness, the light once again grew dim upon contact with the water. The water almost extinguished the light, and therefore it was diminished. The flame was now practically devoid of its bright tongues of illumination, but it was able to revive again. The seed held within itself now the ability to send forth new shoots out of its depths to replace the fading ones. The light now had become inextinguishable, so they couldn't put out the fire in our souls. So, okay. So a stellar period had defined the new round. At this point, it would be impossible to return to the past, since all bridges would be burnt. And they would be burnt by none other than man himself. The most important thing was to discern where the light was and where the darkness was, and what the past and the future meant for him. Through wise discernment of the essence of all things, he was able to build the saving bridge that would span the abyss and lead him to the kingdom of the light. But all too often, people were stubbornly closing their eyes, unwilling to glimpse the bright path which was right beneath their feet, and blindly burnt the bridges that would lead them to the shores of salvation, insisting on their own way. These blind ones were depriving themselves forever of the kingdom of eternal fires, preferring to remain instead in the total gloom of ignorance. Thus began to unfold their stratification of humanity, which was to make the last step beyond the border of the darkness or the light. This was their final choice, for the period as designed by the stars had also determined. Love again came into life in the world, and it diffused the almighty rays which were even able to pierce through the most incredibly dense masses of petrified matter. And little by little, people began to open their eyes. They had long known that every stone was now capable of loving, protecting, guarding, and bringing happiness to their owners, owners whom they indeed loved. Yes, the world was brimming over with love. There is a time to blossom and a time to bear fruit. Were not bounteous fruits being borne by those who had been blooming so luxuriantly in accordance with the periods established for them? Yes, their fruits were fresh and fragrant, but at first they could be seen only by the Creator, the one who had sown the seeds. He was the hand that had generously scattered the divine seeds upon the earth. But some of them fell among the thorns and were choked, and many fell into the stony places. God was waiting for the harvest. He longed to see the divine fruit. For like would bear like unto him, as an apple tree would bear an apple, a pear tree a pear. Thus in everything his law would be obeyed. The seed germinated and hastened to bear fruit. All the shoots by now firmly established, showing their strong stems. Only their fruit was still in question, and only as fruit ripened was it possible to judge the results. But for the period that had not yet come, in the meantime, the fruit was absorbing everything granted to it by the generous world, and the roots, whether they were sunk into the darkness or the light, served to determine the fruit's true value. Thus, the gods directed the motions of the wheels towards a new period once again. And that was the season of reaping, designed to effect the final calculation of the ripened divine harvest. We go to stanza 4, the gift of mind. The sons of God came, see, the harvest, the sons of God came. Harvest time means return of the gods. So, they descended to examine the field, wherein the golden seed was emerging, but the earth had already been partially poisoned with the foreboding fumes of evil. Poison seeped into the soil, threatening to envenom the new shoots. The plants resisted as they strove to develop according to the program laid out in the core seed, or the original templates. The fiery essence of the seed was impervious to darkness. Evil hid himself, lying in wait for an opportune moment to attack the shoots just as they were on the point of breaking through. The sons of God discerned the lurking danger. Henceforth, evil would fall under their eagle-eyed control. This, to me, when I'm reading this, I keep hearing the Bible verse. And the dragon was waiting for the child to be born so that it could devour it. This is the same information. The gods awaited the arrival of the sons who had been sent to the earth. The sons were delayed, however, as they attempted to expose all the spears that had been seized by evil. They were trying to explain certain truths to the people, but these people did not have sufficient intelligence to properly understand the sons of God. The great sages of insight cried unto the gods, turning the wheel to hasten the coming of the periods when man would be endowed with a more perfect mind. And man became thoughtful. He began to notice that his skin had quite recently changed from that of an animal to something now quite different. A human one, but a sinister lower power, one based more on instincts than reason, held sway inside of him and prevented him from ascending. The sons of God, therefore, undertook the enormous task of transmuting instinct into intuition. The serpent, it'll slay you or it'll save you. This is the difference between the slayer and the savior. Instinct into intuition. So when you work the intuition, you're working with the savior. When you're working with instinct, you're working with your primal anima, the animal part of you, which keeps you safe. So you need that part of you too. Don't think it's bad. It's not all bad. It's critical for you to be a human being. You need that animal instinctual part as well. But instead of being guided by the passions of the primal forces within our body, we need to be more aware and tuned into the intuitive guidance part of us, which is following the path of your higher self, which is going to actually protect you and keep you on track to experience and do and see and be all that you came to do, experience, be, and see. So, the work was in full swing upon the earth. The immortal beings were walking among the mortals. Ooh. The work was in full swing on earth. Immortal beings were walking amongst the mortals. So the sons of God, the immortals, they returned to earth, affecting colossal transformations in human hearts. And the condensed clusters of matter steadily started to soften, losing their impenetrable stoniness. Man became capable of feeling with his heart. There were still many things, though, that he could not yet understand, but already he was speaking of what he felt in his heart. And so he took the first steps towards the country of immortality. Wow. When he started to speak of what he felt within his heart, he took the first step towards the country of immortality. Wow. The sons of God noticed that some of the mortals were now being robed in seamless immortal garments. Their hearts were blazing, being reflected with all of their fervor and purity in the great divine fires residing within them. The power of the animal principle had been obliterated within them forever, and all the instincts of the past overcome. These were earthly gods, created from ordinary people. Once they were qualified to replace the higher toilers of light, the sons of God left the fields of earth and returned to the gods on high. Labor was transforming all the living things. Wherever vigilance was abandoned, the darkness appeared at once, bringing her inner laws into play, but she could not approach the toiler, for she knew that the laborer was a prayer to the light. So funny, I walked away from all of my careers and chose to become a maidservant. And this is why I chose to become a toiler. This is the essence of why I made that decision, and it's confirming that the reason I made that decision was because I was following direct intuition from my higher self. That's a beautiful confirmation for me, and one that I really needed to hear. So that's profound and completely awesome. Wow. Taking advantage of the departure of the sons of God, evil again began to invade the souls of light. Those who had accepted the heavenly burden of fire, with its countless legions of gloom, the darkness had endeavored to confront these souls of light with equal or even stronger forces of evil. She had already found such people, catching them at the very moment when they let go of the sacred labor to which had been entrusted to them. After tricking them into believing that one could enjoy the fruits of somebody else's labor, the darkness did not allow them to work, and instead put a sword into their dangling hands. Evil permitted the forceful appropriation of that which it had been given for the good of the whole world, as it had been cultivated for everyone. Menacing whirlwinds of darkness skimmed over the entire planet, spiraling from one end of the globe to the other. These black wheels spun as if by a giant hand, sweeping up all living things in their path. The darkness was determined to raze to the ground all the new shoots that were threatening to cover the earth with a field of gold. God's seeds sprouted, tender shoots as they broke free from the deep ruts that they had been trampled into by the gloom, and promised a rich harvest. Those who had cultivated their divine seeds in the fire were now joined by new souls. They had a great desire to assist their brethren who had risen from the ashes and now shone like lodestars before the eyes of the sighted people. Hearts followed the light bearers. Wow. Hearts followed the light bearers, prepared to pass through a deep abyss of gloom, carrying with them their inner divine light undefiled. The time had come. People began to talk about the periods they started to rise above the concept of time and break away from the ground. Man understood that he was the nexus of the decaying temporal and the undecaying eternal. He was the possessor of two opposite poles, one of which was the epicenter of death and the other one the center of immortality. He was at one and the same time the son of ashes and the son of God. It was indeed a challenge to understand himself, since he had been woven entirely of contradiction, which had taken up a firm position inside him, unwilling to change their own polarity. He was being torn apart. On one hand, the mortal was luring him with all of its might, while on the other, the immortal was attracting and charming him with the marvelous fires of spirit. Man kept swinging from one extreme to another. Decaying earthly treasures held no importance for the light, but decay could not recognize the divine gifts of eternity. A fierce internal struggle was underway. Man was in conflict with himself. Interesting. It says number 33. A gong struck. The third round of the battle was over. Balance had won. Man understood that he should not rush about and fret, thereby weakening his precious life force. His two poles, like two scale pans, he resolved to keep in balance, not letting evil outweigh his divine heritage. The pan of light was featherly and weightless. He must no longer add dark deeds to the opposing pan of darkness. At the same time, he would sort through its contents for worthiness, so as to burn whatever he didn't need as a superfluous rubbish. The work progressed quickly. Man glanced sometimes into one of the pans and sometimes into the other, keeping constant watch over the new additions to the pan of light and the pan of darkness. To see and watch the new additions to the pan of light was difficult, for it was so weightless and invisible that it was a challenge to perceive just when the pan of evil started to outweigh it. A high degree of alertness was required, and the gods decided to set a new period for the round of earthly time, so that mankind would now be armed with this priceless gift of heaven. Stanza 5. The persecution of love. The light of illumination touched the earth. The long night that had dominated the human consciousness was losing its thickly hued layers. The dark veil of ignorance began to drop from the people's eyes as they opened their vision, and they were imbued with alertness. Those who most longed for the light were touched with the fires by the sons of heaven. Their flash of illumination spread among the chosen. Those people absorbed the fires eagerly with enthusiasm, adding to the luminous capabilities of their hearts. The world became lighter and brighter, but still one had to work hard to kindle the fires in the light bearers, the companions, and the sons of heaven called for help from those who had preserved the lucidity of the flame. The sparks were flaring, and with a new era came a great inflow of fire. Many people already carrying the divine flame within their breasts Nevertheless, they were the minority compared with the whole mass of humanity. These light bearers were recognized immediately, for it was impossible to conceal the light. They spoke of God, of pure heaven embraced by the flame of love, of the sons of eternity. Wow. Of pure heaven embraced by the flame of love of the sons of eternity. Wow. The darkness was irritated by such flowery, speechless, and wanting to wrap everyone in an even denser veil of ignorance. She infused malice into the minds of her listeners, consumed violent rage, and blinded by anger. The sightless groped for stones from the fiery hearts. Interlaced with a hail of curses, they rained down on those who were bearing the light of love. Love was beaten, tortured, burnt, but she was ineffaceable. For she was drawing upon the immortal forces within herself. She loved, and that was all that mattered, and the sparks were igniting. The gods saw how desperately the warriors of love were fighting. Armed with the divine gift, they walked the earth in a single motion, in a single mission in mind, to love. For them, the most important thing was to preserve love for humanity. They did not expect a loving response in return, as they failed to meet love in those who had extinguished the spark of fire within themselves and had grown cold. Love was to ignite their godlessly smoking wick. The bearers of the flame touched everyone in sight. Some were ignited at once, promising to preserve and cultivate their tiny flames, while others averted their eyes, and still others took a stone out of their bosoms, which they had harbored there in a place of their heart. Yes, a stone had replaced the heart. But the gods knew how to work with such dense matter, which at some point would turn into a gentle, anephorous scarlet flower, the violet flame. On and on they labored. A drop of water can wear away a stone. A seemingly weak force defeats the stronger one. Water gushed onto the world, and the strongest of all was a tiny drop. For the drop knew that it was one with the limitless ocean of eternity, and it started into work, polishing the dense granite-like masses. It was as though drops of hot tears were falling on the unyielding surface of a stone. The stone was helpless in the face of that steady tap, tap, tap. It was knocking at the door of its soul, demanding that it would open itself into the whole world. The world waited. The stone was silent, but the drop proved to be stronger, and it washed away all soulless barriers in which the darkness had attempted to smother the stone's ever so delicate nature. Now it was free and open to all, and the new world believed in it. The sons of God finally caught their breath and let out a quiet sigh. On the scale pan of evil was becoming noticeably lighter. They breathed out a new stream of fresh fires in response to the call of the hearts that reached them from the bowels of the earth. It plunged into darkness. The planet resembled the night sky, for she was all a twinkling with little sparks of stars. These glowed in the hearts of those who had preserved the fire safe from the malicious claws of the forces that would extinguish it. The sons of God were reaching out with stellar silver threads towards the hearts of the light bearers, turning them into the immortal carriers of divine currents. Such people were able to love and know what love is. Wow. The outer covering of the planet looked something like lace. Bright, glowing threads were being interwoven in a fanciful pattern, faithfully streaming the divine current which was bearing the life-giving power of love. The earth began to breathe in these fires. The sun was blazing, filling all the channels of life, channels of the life-bearing artery of the light with the streams of the new fires. And even the people on earth noticed that. From their point of view, at least, the excessive activity of the sun was burning through everything. Oh my God, that's happening now. The sun, it's changing and it's burning all kinds of stuff it never burned. The world began to be ruled by a completely different current, which had come to replace the old one, carrying within themselves the aroma of the divine spheres. Even the earth had changed her appearance. She could not resist the renewing power of the fires. The planet also renewed her continents, submerging to the bottom those who needed the purifying effect of the water. In the flame of the yawning craters, she had burnt away anything that could not fit into the new life. Now she was being nourished by other currents, desiring to rid herself forever of the mistakes which had stained her mantle in the past. With the transformation of her appearance, the earth sought release from the clutch of the filthy hands of evil that were blackening her spheres. For evil had gone into hiding and was now immersed in the gloom of non-existence. But therein too remained his carriers that formed the greater part of the slumbering humanity. Evil was trying with a new strength to bring back its former glory days, and in its main hope, as always, rested on people, for they would have to hate literally everything in order to infuse the whole soil with the seeds of hatred, which were alone capable of choking the gentle shoots of love. Gloom was once again on the attack. Malice was devouring itself, oozing with anger. Light was getting strong once again, and it was capable of only loving, and so he loved. As the malice was devouring and oozing with anger, it was counting on provoking hatred in response to hatred, but the light bearers rejected it. And spiteful attacks in response, for they perceived no enemy, nor would they pervert the energy of love. By transforming it into its opposite, they had confidently taken their places on the pole, bearing the imprint of love. For them, the opposite pole from which only cold hatred was pouring forth, held no attraction at all. The darkness was losing its strength. Her army simply melted before her eyes. As it drew nearer to the warmth of loving hearts, rarely did anyone forsake the camp of the light. Deserters were becoming ever harder to find, and it was now almost impossible to win over the dark side anyone who had recognized the true value of divine love. The flame did not die out. Rather, it shone ever more gently, illuminating the world with a steady light. Balance was established on the planet. The scale pans were gradually stabilized, manifesting a balance of power. Everything lay low, held in abeyance. The darkness was afraid of making a single step towards the light, for she could easily be dissolved in the fervent embrace of the flame. Nor did the light advance, for he had no right to attack or to impose his warmth or the light of love upon the unwilling. Light responds only to the call, and does so in the twinkling of an eye, filling the crying heart with generous currents of love. The two huge pans of the scales were being held by the invisible hands of humanity, which was free to place them into either good or evil, calling upon the forces of either the darkness or the light. All the worlds stood still, awaiting the final choice that people of earth, now divided and clustering at two opposite poles, were obligated to make. Humanity was deciding its destiny. The gods stood still, just for a moment, stopped the motion of the rotating wheel of time. Stanza 6, the final battle. The hour had struck. Time began to flow in its designated channels once again. We will pick up there on Stanza 6, the final battle. And I'll try to do one more video today on my day off, the only day off I have. And hopefully I'll be able to get that to you the following day. But I love you guys. I hope you find this interesting. I think this is profound information, and it's resonating some real deep truth bells within me. So I hope it's helping you to remember part of what we've been through, part of what we've done, part of what we've accomplished, and it was all done through love. So I love you guys all. Have a beautiful day or night wherever you may be. And Agapegenesis. Let's do it. Let's create a genesis of love. So I love you all. Agape love forever. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.